Okay, I've made it to the world's last known location.
Any sign of him?
No, not yet, I'm afraid.
Oh dear, I hope he's okay. He's been quiet ever since the Season 2 review started.
Hold on a second. I think I found something.
What have you found?
Yeah, don't keep us in suspense.
It looks like some kind of freezer. Could it be a tomb? Oh no. Ugh. Oh, mystery solved. He's just on a 60s simping grind again. Nothing to see here.
Oh, that explains everything.
Surprise, surprise.
Is the 10th planet the first time the Doctor meets the Cybermen? I know a lot of you will be giving me quizzical looks at this point. Yes? The first time the Cybermen ever appear in Doctor Who is in the 10th Planet. The 1966 four-part swan song for the first Doctor, written by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis for the show's 4th season. And yeah, I'm certainly not denying that. When discussing the broadcast chronology of Doctor Who as a TV show, yes, that is their first appearance. But that's also not what I asked. In universe, had the Doctor already met them before this point off screen? I realise this is a potentially blasphemous question. It seems to be an unspoken agreement among fans that the first time we see the Cybermen and the Doctor's initial encounter with them are one and the same. But is that necessarily the case? Because there are some details that make me wonder. Let's discuss. So the premise of the 10th Planet concerns a mysterious and previously unknown world, Mondas, emerging from the depths of space and entering our solar system, gradually approaching and draining energy from the Earth itself. Now, I said previously unknown, yet the Doctor instantly, and quite notably, has a strong suspicion of what it may be as soon as it appears, which is all but confirmed when he seems to accurately predict its striking inversion of Earth's geography.
He has correctly written down what we have just seen, and he did it before we saw it.
And not only is the Doctor aware that this is Earth's long-lost twin planet long before that gets explicitly confirmed later on, but he's also apprehensively certain that its return heralds the imminent arrival of alien visitors. Now, the serial doesn't actually explore the circumstances behind the Doctor's prior awareness of Mondas. Quite amusingly, when prompted to give an explanation, he does it off-screen during a cutaway and cliffhanger. We rejoin him next episode after he's done, like,
what a story, Mark.
So how he learned all of this is left completely ambiguous. Though I must say, it's surprisingly easy to take it for granted. After all, we know the Doctor is a very learned individual with a wealth of historic and scientific knowledge from across the universe and all of time, so it's easy to just assume that he acquired this information through hearsay or remote research. Hell, maybe this is a Waters of Mars style situation where Mondas's return is a major historical event and he learned about it prior to ending up involved. Counterpoint, however, who's to say that this uneasy foreknowledge isn't indicative of an actual prior personal experience? Especially considering the ominous certainty with which he discusses the arrival of visitors. This is the magic of a performance like Hartnell's. His unease could be interpreted in many ways. Is he steadfast in his assertion based purely on observation and deduction? Or perhaps, being a time traveller, he's aware of the notorious menace of the Cybermen before he's even met them? Or maybe, for the purposes of this theory, he knows of Mondas's inhabitants from direct experience. This possibility remains open even when the Cybermen actually do turn up in person, because ever notice how suspiciously quiet the Doctor is during their self-introductory exposition? He's not the one posing any questions in response, he's letting Polly cook here. There's nothing in the Doctor's dialogue or demeanour that outright indicates total unfamiliarity with these creatures. If anything, you could argue he seems quite assured in his judgment of them at one point.
I think you rather underestimate the Cybermen, General.
Of course, there are moments where he requests clarification from them, but almost every instance concerns their current intentions rather than their general identity. The only outliers to this are
Emotions, love, pride, hate, fear. Have you no emotions, sir?
and
Why should we mind? Why? Why?
but these are framed as rhetorical questions anyway, similar to later encounters he'd have with them. Of course, one could ask why the Doctor, the shameless name-dropper that he is, never directly mentions this hypothetical previous encounter, but maybe he did. Again, we don't know what he said during that mysterious cutaway. Besides, because of reasons, we know he becomes more distant and withdrawn as the serial progresses, which would go a long way to explaining his relative silence on this front. Of course, all of this is circumstantial and interpretive, and I cannot claim with any degree of authority that this ambiguity was intended. But still, it is curious that this wasn't the last time Pedler and Davis would write a Cyberman story where the Doctor seems to know something about them in advance. That brings us to the Tomb of the Cybermen, and if you've seen my video on Cybermats, you'll know where I'm going with this. The Doctor recognising and identifying a dormant Cybermat from a passage in his 500-year diary. A pretty notable moment given that this serial is where the Cybermats debuted. But again, there's no smoking gun that explicitly confirms whether this awareness stems from an actual previous off-screen encounter. Sure, later on he seems immediately knowledgeable on how they function and how to defeat them, but he's clever and thinks quickly on his feet. Like with Mondas, one could easily assume that this is just one of countless tidbits of trivia he's indirectly accumulated over the years and jotted down purely academically. But I don't know. While we never know its true nature, the 500-year diary has always struck me as something more personal to the Doctor than that, especially considering what it symbolises in the power of the Daleks. Hella inference for sure, but if he's consulting an observation from his journal, I think it's reasonable to consider that it's possibly something he's had actual prior hands-on experience with. But in that case, when? Not likely in the company of Jamie, since he seems completely unfamiliar with Cybermats here. And likely not off-screen with Ben and Polly either, since the Moonbase is clearly their first run-in with the Cybermen since Mondas's destruction.
The Cybermen were all killed when Mondas blew up, weren't they?
So, unless there's some wacky mind-wiping shenanigans going on, there's not exactly much room to work with here. Unless it takes place prior to the 10th planet. So to recap, we have the Doctor already being well aware of the existence, history, appearance, and potentially even the inhabitants of a twin planet to Earth, as well as Cybermats, in advance of his first on-screen encounters with them. If we're truly going to suggest that, yes, this all points to a secret off-screen run-in he had with the Cybermen at an earlier point, surely this supposed event would have to account for all of this, which paints an interesting picture for what it could look like. Would it hypothetically be akin to Spare Parts, only with the First Doctor? And how far back in his timeline could this have happened? Perhaps with Stephen. I could imagine a super grim dark situation there that'd really fit the interpersonal tension they were having circa the massacre. Or maybe further back with Ian and Barbara. The mere existence of Mondas would be a really interesting curveball to their worldviews as science and history teachers respectively. Or we could place it even earlier, before the events of the show when it was just the Doctor and Susan. Hell, with the whole pre-Hartnell fugitive Doctor angle opened up by the Chibnall era, that's another avenue that could potentially be taken, and you could theorise that the Doctor's later awareness is those buried memories slipping through. Okay, no, hold on, time out, stop for a sec. I don't know, despite these being perfectly logical angles to explore based on this circumstantial evidence, I admit, it still feels wrong to suggest that the Doctor could have met the Cybermen earlier than we thought. But why? This isn't an issue when it comes to the on-screen debut of some other recurring villains like the Master or the Sontarans, where it's made clear that the Doctor already has a prior history with them. Hell, other Doctor Who media has even indirectly reinforced this idea. After all, the first Doctor did witness them in The Five Doctors, and both DWM Comics and the Series 10 finale retroactively roped the Keys of Marinus, one of the earliest Doctor Who adventures, into Cyberman mythology too. And yet, this just isn't how we seem to think of it. From the Doctor's point of view, we still see the 10th planet as the first time he ever met the Cybermen. And this is just conjecture, but I wonder if the reason why is due to a certain other major event which occurs in the same story. So with that being said, does it actually enhance the first Doctor's regeneration if we perceive the 10th planet as his bona fide first encounter with the Cybermen? After all, it became customary for subsequent incarnations of the Doctor to bow out with an important landmark event in their lives, a situation which grants them a lot of agency while simultaneously pushing them to confront a personal conflict, the outcome of which setting them on the path to their demise and serving as an emotional culmination of their tenure. Now, this wasn't the case with every Doctor's final moments, of course, but all the best regeneration stories do this in some capacity. Where the 10th planet is concerned, though, it's kind of an oddball in retrospect. Due to the first Doctor's increasingly reduced role as a result of Hartnell's failing health at the time, it's hardly the most climactic or involved last hurrah a Doctor has ever had. Now, it didn't need to be. I think the first Doctor's gradually fading presence towards the end of his life is profound in its own way, kind of mirroring the universal experience of watching an elderly relative slip away, not to mention aiding the mystery and confusion of the first regeneration. However, the fact that the experience which ultimately exhausts the Doctor's first body is what is commonly perceived as his initial encounter with the Cybermen, it kind of ends up serving as a symbolically powerful showcase for what a worthy foe they are for him, even if they aren't directly responsible. From that point of view, the idea that maybe he'd actually met them before might honestly have the effect of lessening the dramatic weight of this situation into being just a rematch that he took a nap during. This is why, despite all the circumstantial evidence I've brought up and played devil's advocate for in this video, I do ultimately prefer to view this as his first encounter with the Cybermen when all is said and done. It just feels more narratively satisfying that way. So in that case, why did I go on this thought experiment? I don't know. I just thought it'd make for a fun analysis, I suppose. I don't think I've ever seen anyone really deconstruct the Doctor's prior foreknowledge of Mondas before, and I just thought it'd be interesting to explore the implications behind that, so here we are. But who knows, maybe you'll feel differently about what I've discussed today, so comment your perspective below. I'd be interested to hear you out. But yeah, anyway, I am going to go back into hibernation now, so I don't know, see you when I next see you. Actually, you know what? No. I've been asleep for too long. I need to get back in the game.